The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across Ruby City, Nevada. As Virgil Lawson rode into town, his daughter's small coffin strapped to the back of his horse. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words since his wife Catherine had died in childbirth 3 days ago, leaving him alone with 6-year-old Emma, a child he barely knew how to look at, let alone raise. The mining town's main street fell silent as he passed, men removing their hats in solemn respect for the tiny pine box. It was 1878, and the silver boom that had given Ruby City its brief prosperity was already waning. Virgil had spent the past 5 years working claims in the hills, sending money back to Catherine and Emma in San Francisco, visiting only twice a year. Now, with Catherine gone, he had nowhere to leave the girl while he worked his claim. "Mr. Lawson," Sheriff Porter called, stepping from his office as Virgil passed. "Heard about Catherine. My condolences." Virgil nodded without stopping, guiding his horse toward the undertaker's. Emma sat perfectly still on her pony beside him, her small face blank with shock, her blonde hair tied back with a blue ribbon that matched her eyes Catherine's eyes. At the undertaker's, Virgil handled the arrangements with as few words as possible. Emma stood silently beside him, clutching a small rag doll, the only toy she'd brought from San Francisco. "Where will you be staying?" the undertaker asked. "Miner's Rest," Virgil replied, naming the only decent boarding house in town. The undertaker cleared his throat. "They don't usually take children." Virgil hadn't considered this. He'd barely considered anything beyond getting Catherine buried. "I'll talk to them." As predicted, Bertha Wilson, the stern-faced proprietress of the Miner's Rest, wasn't pleased when Virgil appeared with Emma in tow. "No children, Mr. Lawson. It's policy," she said, arms folded across her substantial bosom. "Miners coming back from their claims want peace and quiet, not some child running about." "She doesn't run about," Virgil said flatly. "She barely speaks." Bertha's eyes softened slightly as she looked at Emma, who stood clutching her doll, eyes downcast. "Still, I can't make exceptions. We'll take a room at the back then," Virgil interrupted. "Just until after the funeral. I'll pay double." Bertha hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. 2 nights. "Then you'll need to make other arrangements." Their room was small but clean, with a single bed. Virgil placed their few belongings on the floor and turned to Emma. "You take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor." Emma nodded and climbed onto the bed fully clothed, her doll clutched to her chest. Virgil stood awkwardly in the center of the room. He should say something to comfort her, he knew, but words had never come easily to him, and now they seemed impossible to find. Instead, he busied himself with laying out his bedroll on the floor. The funeral was held the following day, a simple affair attended by a handful of townsfolk who had known Catherine during her brief visit to Ruby City 5 years earlier. Emma stood beside the grave, her small hand lost in Virgil's, as the preacher spoke words that seemed to float away on the hot desert wind. Afterward, as they walked back toward the boarding house, Emma spoke for the first time since San Francisco. "Where will we live now?" She asked, her voice so small Virgil barely heard it. "I've got a cabin," he said, "up by my claim." "Is it nice?" Her blue eyes looked up at him, seeking reassurance. Virgil hesitated. The cabin was a one-room shack with a dirt floor and a leaky roof. He'd never bothered to make it comfortable since he'd only used it for sleeping between long shifts at his claim. "It needs some work," he admitted. That afternoon, while Emma napped, exhausted from grief, Virgil visited the general store. He needed supplies if he was going to make the cabin habitable for a child. Beatrice Henderson, the store owner's daughter, was sorting inventory behind the counter when he entered. At 25, she was known in Ruby City for her practical nature and kind heart. Her father had passed 6 months earlier, leaving her to run the store alone. "Mr. Lawson," she said, recognizing him from the funeral. "I'm so sorry about your wife." Virgil nodded awkwardly. "Need some supplies, got a list here." He handed her a paper with his scrawled writing. Beatrice scanned it quickly: blankets, cooking pots, flour, sugar, coffee, a small mirror, ribbons. Ribbons? She asked with a slight smile. For Emma, her hair, Catherine always. He trailed off, unable to continue. Beatrice's expression softened. I understand. Let me help you find everything. As she gathered his supplies, she asked, where will you and Emma be staying? The cabin up by your claim isn't really set up for a child from what I've heard. It's all I've got, Virgil replied. I'll fix it up. Beatrice hesitated. I have a spare room above the store. It's small, but it might be better for Emma until you can properly prepare the cabin. Virgil stiffened. We don't need charity. It's not charity, Beatrice replied calmly. You'd pay rent, of course, and perhaps help with some repairs around the store. The roof leaks when it rains. Virgil considered the offer. It would be better for Emma, and it would give him time to make the cabin proper. Just until I fix up the cabin, he said finally. Of course. Beatrice smiled. That evening, Virgil and Emma moved their meager possessions to the room above the general store. It was small but tidy, with 2 narrow beds, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. This is Miss Henderson's place, Virgil explained to Emma as they settled in. We're staying here while I fix our cabin. Emma nodded, sitting on one of the beds and arranging her doll beside her. Is Miss Henderson nice? Seems to be, Virgil replied, unpacking their things. Mama said always be polite to nice people, Emma said softly. Virgil paused, swallowing hard at the mention of Catherine. Your mama was right. The first week in Beatrice's spare room passed awkwardly. Virgil spent his days at his claim, leaving Emma with Beatrice, who had agreed to watch her while he worked. Each evening he would return, exhausted and dirt-covered, to find Emma helping Beatrice in the store, counting inventory or arranging displays. He barely spoke to either of them beyond necessary exchanges about Emma's care, or his work repairing the store roof on Sundays. With Emma, the silence was particularly painful. He'd look at her sometimes and see Catherine's features, the slight tilt of her head, the way she tucked her hair behind her ears, and words would simply fail him. One evening, as Virgil sat on the porch behind the store smoking his pipe, Beatrice joined him, a cup of coffee in her hand. Emma's asleep, she said, sitting beside him. Virgil nodded, staring at the darkening hills beyond town. She's a good girl, Beatrice continued. Smart, too. She's been helping me with the ledger. She has quite a head for numbers. Catherine taught her, Virgil said. She was good with figures. They sat in silence for a moment before Beatrice spoke again. She asks about you, you know. Wants to know what you were like when you were younger, what you enjoy besides mining. Virgil shifted uncomfortably. What do you tell her? That she should ask you herself. Beatrice sipped her coffee. But she says you don't like to talk much. Never been one for words, Virgil admitted. She needs more than silence from you, Mr. Lawson. Beatrice's voice was gentle but firm. She's lost her mother. She needs to know her father. Virgil drew deeply on his pipe. I don't know how, he said finally. Don't know how to talk to her. Beatrice turned to face him, her brown eyes serious in the fading light. Start with hello, she said simply. She'll do the rest. The next morning, before leaving for his claim, Virgil paused at Emma's bed. She was already awake, her blue eyes watching him cautiously. Hello, Emma, he said, the words feeling strange on his tongue, her face lit up with surprise and something like hope. Hello, Papa, I'm going to work now, but I'll be back for supper, she nodded. Miss Henderson is teaching me to make biscuits today. Is that so? Virgil hesitated, then added, maybe you could make some for supper. Emma smiled, the first real smile he'd seen since Catherine died. I will, Papa. That evening, Virgil returned to find Emma proudly displaying a plate of slightly misshapen biscuits. I made them myself, she announced. Miss Henderson only helped with the oven. They look good, Virgil said, washing his hands at the basin. The three of them sat at Beatrice's small kitchen table. Emma chattered nervously about her day, filling the silence that had previously dominated their meals. Virgil said little, but he made an effort to respond when Emma directed questions his way. Did you find any silver today, Papa? She asked. A little, he replied. Need to dig deeper, though. Can I see your claim someday? Virgil glanced at Beatrice, who was watching them with a small smile. It's not a place for children, he began. Perhaps on Sunday, Beatrice suggested. If Mr. Lawson isn't working, maybe he could show you around, Emma, just the outside parts, of course. Virgil found himself nodding. Sunday then. As the weeks passed, Virgil slowly began to find his footing with Emma. Their morning hellos became a ritual, and he found himself looking forward to her eager responses. Sometimes she would ask questions about his work, about the town, about the animals in the hills, and he would do his best to answer, his responses growing less terse with practice. In the evenings, when Emma was asleep, he often found himself sitting with Beatrice on the back porch. Their conversations started with practical matters, Emma's needs, store inventory, repairs, but gradually expanded to include their pasts. Beatrice had come west with her father after her mother died of consumption. They'd planned to continue to California, but her father's health had failed, and they'd settled in Ruby City instead. She'd been 18 then, and had helped run the store for 7 years before her father's death. You ever think of leaving? Virgil asked one evening. Going to California like you'd planned, Beatrice shook her head. This is home now, the store is mine, the people here, they depend on it. She paused. What about you? Will you stay in Ruby City now that Catherine is gone? Virgil hadn't thought beyond the immediate future. My claim's here, he said, and Emma seems settled. She is, Beatrice agreed. She's doing well considering you're doing well with her. Thanks to you, Virgil acknowledged. I wouldn't have known where to start without your help. Beatrice smiled, her face softening in the lamplight. You just needed a little push in the right direction. The rest was all you. The Sunday trip to Virgil's claim became a weekly tradition. He would show Emma the progress he'd made, explaining how he followed the silver veins through the rock, how he shored up the tunnel walls for safety, how he tested rocks for silver content. She absorbed it all with wide-eyed interest, asking questions that sometimes surprised him with their insight. After seeing the claim, they would ride to his cabin, where Virgil had been making improvements each weekend: a proper wooden floor, a second room for Emma, glass windows instead of oilskin, a small garden plot. When will it be ready for us to live in? Emma asked one Sunday in late July as they sat on the cabin's new porch eating lunch. Soon, Virgil replied. Need to finish the roof and get some furniture built. Emma nodded, considering this. I'll miss Miss Henderson, she said after a moment. Virgil felt an unexpected pang at her words. He would miss Beatrice too, he realized. Their evening conversations had become important to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Maybe she could visit sometimes, he suggested. Emma brightened. Do you think she would? We could ask her. That evening, as they rode back into town, they found Beatrice sitting on the store's front porch, reading a book in the fading light. Miss Henderson, Emma called, sliding from her pony before Virgil could help her down. Papa said you might visit our cabin sometimes after we move there. Would you? Beatrice looked up at Virgil, a question in her eyes. If you'd like, he said, suddenly feeling awkward. It's not much, but I'd be honored, Beatrice replied. I'd like to see what you've done with the place. The following Sunday, Beatrice joined them for their trip to the cabin. She rode her own horse, a gentle bay mare, and brought a basket of food for lunch. This is impressive, Virgil, she said as she toured the improvements he'd made. It was the first time she'd used his given name, and they both seemed aware of the shift it represented. Emma will be very comfortable here. Still needs work, he said, though he felt a surge of pride at her approval. They ate lunch on the porch, Emma chattering about the wildflowers she'd found growing nearby and her plans to transplant some to the garden. After lunch, Emma ran off to collect more flowers, leaving Virgil and Beatrice alone on the porch. Thank you for all you've done for us, Virgil said, watching Emma in the distance. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't offered us that room. You would have managed, Beatrice replied. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. Virgil shook his head. Not with Emma. I was lost with her, still am sometimes. But you're learning, that's what matters, Beatrice hesitated. She talks about your cabin all the time, you know. She's excited about living here with you. I was thinking, Virgil said slowly, that maybe we don't need to rush it, moving here, I mean. The winter will be coming in a few months, might be better to wait until spring. Beatrice looked at him curiously. Are you sure that's what you want? Virgil met her gaze. I'm not sure about much these days, except that Emma is happy where she is and He paused, searching for words. I've grown accustomed to our evenings on the porch. A slight flush colored Beatrice's cheeks. I've grown accustomed to them too. The first snowfall of the season came in late October, dusting Ruby City with white and turning the distant mountains into glittering peaks. Emma was enchanted, rushing outside to catch snowflakes on her tongue while Virgil watched from the store doorway. First snow is always the prettiest, Beatrice said, joining him. Though we'll be sick of it by February. Virgil nodded, watching Emma spin with her arms outstretched. Catherine loved the snow, he said quietly. Used to say it made everything look new again. Beatrice was silent for a moment. You don't talk about her much, she observed. Hurts to remember sometimes, Virgil admitted. But Emma should know about her mother. I need to do better with that. You could start a memory book, Beatrice suggested. Write down stories about Catherine for Emma to keep. I could help you if you'd like. Virgil considered this. I'd like that. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Beatrice brought out a leather-bound journal and set it on the kitchen table. We can start simple, she said. Just memories as they come to you. Virgil stared at the blank page, pen in hand. She loved music, he said finally. Had a beautiful singing voice. Used to sing Emma to sleep every night. Beatrice nodded encouragingly and Virgil began to write. The words came slowly at first, but as he continued, memories flowed more easily. Catherine's laugh, the way she'd insist on fresh flowers even in their tiny San Francisco apartment, how she'd read poetry aloud while mending clothes. By the time he set down the pen, he'd filled 3 pages. That's a good start, Beatrice said softly. Virgil looked up, surprised to find tears in his eyes. Thank you, he said, for this, for everything. Beatrice reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. You're welcome. As winter deepened, the rhythm of their lives adjusted to the season. Virgil could only work his claim on the mildest days, so he spent more time helping in the store, repairing shelves, reorganizing the storeroom, and building new display cases. Emma continued to flourish. She attended the small school that operated during the winter months, quickly becoming one of the teacher's favorite pupils. In the evenings, she would read aloud from her primer while Virgil and Beatrice listened, or help with simple tasks around the store. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere despite the harsh weather. The town organized a holiday social at the church, and Emma was beside herself with excitement. Do you think Santa will find us here? She asked Virgil one evening as he tucked her into bed. I expect so, he replied. He's pretty good at finding children from what I hear. Even if we're not in our own house, Virgil smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Even then. This is our home for now, isn't it? Emma nodded. I like it here with you and Miss Henderson. I like it too, Virgil admitted. Miss Henderson makes you smile, Emma observed sleepily. Mama would be glad about that. Virgil felt his chest tighten. You think so, MMHMM? She told me once that you didn't smile enough. She said your eyes were sad from working so hard for us. Emma yawned. But they're not so sad anymore. Virgil swallowed hard. Good night, Emma. Night, Papa. The next day, while Emma was at school, Virgil visited the jeweler's shop on the far end of town. He'd been saving from his claim, planning to use the money for furniture for the cabin, but another idea had taken root in his mind. Mr. Hoffman, the jeweler, greeted him with surprise. Mr. Lawson, don't believe I've seen you in my shop before. Never had cause to visit, Virgil replied. Looking for something special, a Christmas gift, for your daughter? Hoffman asked. No, for Miss Henderson. Virgil cleared his throat. Something simple but fine, a pendant maybe. Hoffman's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. I might have just the thing. He produced a silver pendant on a delicate chain, a small heart with a single pearl at its center. Sterling silver, Hoffman explained, and a genuine freshwater pearl, elegant but not ostentatious. Virgil examined it carefully. It's right, how much? When Hoffman named his price, Virgil didn't flinch, though it was more than he'd expected to spend. He counted out the money from his pouch. Would you like it engraved? Hoffman asked. No extra charge for a simple inscription. Virgil hesitated. Just her name, Beatrice. Beautiful name, Hoffman commented as he prepared to engrave the pendant. You'll make her a happy woman, Mr. Lawson. Virgil didn't correct the jeweler's assumption. The Christmas social was held on the evening of December 23rd. The church was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, and a large tree stood in the corner, adorned with paper ornaments made by the schoolchildren. Emma wore her best dress, her hair tied back with a green ribbon Beatrice had given her. Virgil had put on his one good shirt and had even trimmed his beard for the occasion. You both look wonderful, Beatrice said when they met her at the church door. She herself wore a deep blue dress Virgil had never seen before, her brown hair arranged in an elegant twist. You look beautiful, Miss Henderson, Emma said, echoing Virgil's thoughts. Thank you, Emma, Beatrice replied with a smile. Shall we go in? The church was crowded with townspeople, all in their holiday best. There was music from a small band, a fiddle, guitar, and piano, and tables laden with food brought by the women of Ruby City. Emma was quickly swept off by her school friends, leaving Virgil and Beatrice standing somewhat awkwardly at the edge of the room. Would you like some punch? Virgil asked. That would be nice, Beatrice replied. As Virgil made his way to the punch bowl, he overheard snatches of conversation about himself and Beatrice. Living above her store since summer. Raising his daughter together practically. Wonder when they'll make it official. He returned with 2 cups of punch, his expression thoughtful. Is everything all right? Beatrice asked, accepting her cup. People are talking, Virgil said quietly. About us. Beatrice took a sip of punch, her eyes steady on his. Does that bother you? No, Virgil replied, surprising himself with the realization. Just made me think. Before he could elaborate, the music changed to a waltz and couples began to move to the center of the room. Would you care to dance? Virgil asked impulsively. Beatrice's eyes widened slightly. I didn't know you danced. Catherine insisted I learn before we married, he admitted. Haven't done it in years, though. Might step on your toes. I'll risk it, Beatrice said with a smile. Virgil set down their cups and led her to the dance floor. He was rusty at first, counting the steps in his head, but soon the rhythm came back to him and they moved smoothly among the other dancers. You're full of surprises, Virgil Lawson, Beatrice said as they circled the floor. So are you, he replied. Never seen you in that dress before. I save it for special occasions. It suits you. The color. Beatrice looked pleased at the compliment. Thank you. When the music ended, they remained on the floor, slightly breathless, until Emma appeared at their side. Papa, you were dancing, she exclaimed. I didn't know you could dance. Full of surprises, your father, Beatrice said with a smile. The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur of music, food, and conversation. Emma performed a song with the other schoolchildren, her clear voice rising confidently above the others. Virgil felt a swell of pride watching her, and when he caught Beatrice's eye across the room, he saw his own feelings mirrored there. It was late when they finally left the church, Emma half asleep on her feet between them. Snow had begun falling again, large flakes drifting down in the glow of the street lamps. I'll carry her, Virgil said, lifting Emma into his arms. They walked back to the store in companionable silence, their footsteps crunching in the fresh snow. Inside, Virgil carried Emma up to their room and settled her into bed without waking her. When he came back downstairs, Beatrice was in the kitchen, heating water for tea. Thank you for tonight, she said as he entered. I enjoyed it very much. So did I, Virgil replied. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. Got something for you, for Christmas. Wanted to give it to you privately. He held out a small package wrapped in plain brown paper tied with a piece of red ribbon. Beatrice looked surprised. You didn't have to get me anything. Wanted to, Virgil said simply. She untied the ribbon carefully and unfolded the paper to reveal the silver pendant. "Oh, Virgil," she breathed, lifting it by the chain. "It's beautiful." "Turn it over," he said she did, finding her name engraved on the back. "I don't know what to say." "Don't have to say anything," Virgil replied. "Just wanted you to know what you mean to me, to us." He paused. "Would you like me to put it on for you?" Beatrice nodded, handing him the necklace and turning around. Virgil carefully fastened it around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin. When she turned back to face him, there were tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. Without thinking, Virgil reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Beatrice stepped closer and, rising slightly on her toes, kissed him gently on the lips. It was a brief kiss, almost chaste, but it sent a rush of warmth through Virgil that he hadn't felt in years. "I should go to bed," Beatrice said when she pulled away, her cheeks flushed. "It's late." Virgil nodded, unable to find words. "Good night, Virgil," she said, touching the pendant at her throat. "Good night, Beatrice." The next day was Christmas Eve. Virgil woke early, his mind still lingering on the kiss they had shared. He found Emma already awake, sitting on her bed with an expectant expression. "It's Christmas Eve, Papa," she announced. "Only one more day until Christmas." "That's right," Virgil replied, smiling at her excitement. "Got any special plans today?" "Miss Henderson said we could bake cookies," Emma said, "and I want to finish my present for her." Emma had been working secretly on a gift for Beatrice, a small embroidered handkerchief with Beatrice's initials. Miss Walker, the schoolteacher, had been helping her with it after school. "I'm sure she'll love it," Virgil assured her. "Why don't you get dressed and we'll go down for breakfast?" They found Beatrice in the kitchen, already preparing a breakfast of oatmeal and dried apples. She wore the silver pendant over her simple dress, and Virgil felt a surge of pleasure at seeing it there. "Good morning," she greeted them with a slightly shy smile. "Good morning, Miss Henderson," Emma replied. "Papa says we can bake cookies today if you still want to." "I do indeed," Beatrice said. "I've already set aside the flour and sugar." They spent the morning in the kitchen, mixing dough and cutting out shapes, stars, trees, and circles that Emma declared were snowmen. The store remained closed for the holiday, allowing them to focus entirely on their baking project. Virgil found himself watching Beatrice as she worked, admiring the way she patiently showed Emma how to roll the dough to the right thickness, how to carefully transfer the cut shapes to the baking sheet. There was an ease between them that reminded him of Catherine with Emma, yet was uniquely Beatrice's own. When the cookies were cooling on the kitchen table, Emma announced that she needed to finish her secret project and disappeared upstairs. Virgil and Beatrice were left alone in the kitchen, both suddenly aware of their solitude. About last night, they began simultaneously, then stopped, laughing awkwardly. "You first," Beatrice said. Virgil took a deep breath. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since Catherine," he said simply. "Didn't expect to ever again," Beatrice's expression softened. "I understand if it's too soon." "It's not," Virgil interrupted. "Been thinking about it for a while now, just didn't know how to say it." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I care for you, Beatrice." "More than I thought possible." "I care for you too," she replied, squeezing his hand. "And for Emma, you've both become so important to me. People in town are already talking like we're practically married," Virgil said with a slight smile. "Are they now?" Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "And how do you feel about that?" "Don't mind it," Virgil admitted. "Might like to make it true someday if you were amenable." Beatrice's eyes widened. "Virgil Lawson, is that a proposal, more of a future intention?" he replied. "Want to do things properly, court you first like you deserve." "I'd like that very much," Beatrice said softly. They were still holding hands when Emma returned, clutching a small wrapped package. "Is this my Christmas present?" Beatrice asked, quickly releasing Virgil's hand. "Yes," Emma said proudly, "but you have to wait until tomorrow to open it." "Then I'll put it under the tree with the others," Beatrice replied, accepting the package. In the corner of the parlor, a small pine tree had been set up. decorated with paper chains and candles. Several packages already lay beneath it, gifts for Emma from Virgil and Beatrice, and one from Virgil to Emma that had arrived by stage from San Francisco the previous week. That night, after a simple supper, they gathered in the parlor. Virgil read the Christmas story from Beatrice's Bible while Emma listened, wide-eyed, though she must have heard it many times before. Then Beatrice played carols on the small piano that had been her mother's, and they all sang together, even Virgil, his deep voice joining Beatrice's clear soprano and Emma's enthusiastic treble. As they prepared for bed, Emma asked, "Can I sleep in your room tonight, Papa? Just until Santa comes." Virgil glanced at Beatrice, who nodded her understanding. "Of course," he told Emma. "Special arrangement for Christmas Eve." In their room, as Emma settled into her bed, she asked, "Do you think Mama can see us at Christmas from heaven?" Virgil sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "I believe she can. The preacher says heaven is a place where those who have gone before watch over those they love." Emma nodded, satisfied. "I think she'd be happy that we have Miss Henderson now, don't you, Papa?" "I do," Virgil replied honestly. "Your Mama would want us to be happy." "I am happy," Emma said, yawning. "Are you happy too, Papa?" Virgil thought about the past 6 months, the grief and confusion that had gradually given way to a new kind of contentment, the slow rebuilding of his relationship with Emma, and now this unexpected second chance at love with Beatrice. "Yes," he said, "I'm happy too." Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow and bright sunshine. Emma woke Virgil at dawn, bouncing on his bed with excitement. "It's Christmas, Papa. Can we go see if Santa came?" They found Beatrice already in the kitchen, preparing a special breakfast of flapjacks and preserves. "Merry Christmas," she greeted them. "I thought we might eat first, then open presents. Would that be all right, Emma?" Emma looked momentarily disappointed, but then nodded bravely. "I can wait." Breakfast was a festive affair, with Beatrice's best tablecloth on the table and candles lit despite the early hour. They ate quickly, Emma barely able to contain her excitement. Finally, they moved to the parlor, where Emma discovered that Santa had indeed found her, leaving a beautiful porcelain doll with real hair and a trunk full of tiny clothes. "She's perfect," Emma exclaimed, hugging the doll to her chest. "Thank you, Santa." Next came the presents from beneath the tree. Emma unwrapped a new winter coat from Beatrice, made from warm blue wool that matched her eyes, and a set of illustrated fairy tale books from Virgil, ordered specially from San Francisco. Beatrice received Emma's carefully embroidered handkerchief with genuine delight, praising the neat stitches and careful lettering. From Virgil, she opened a package containing a fine cashmere shawl in deep burgundy. "It's beautiful," she said, wrapping it around her shoulders. "Thank you, Virgil." Virgil's gifts were a new pipe from Beatrice and a hand-drawn picture from Emma showing the three of them in front of what appeared to be their cabin. "That's us at our house," Emma explained. "When it's all fixed up, see, there's you and me and Miss Henderson." Virgil met Beatrice's eyes over Emma's head, both of them understanding the significance of Emma's inclusion of Beatrice in their future. "It's perfect," Virgil said, carefully setting the drawing aside. "Best present I could ask for." The rest of Christmas Day passed in a pleasant haze of good food, carols, and quiet contentment. In the afternoon, several of Emma's school friends stopped by to show off their new toys and sample Beatrice's cookies. When they'd gone, the three of them sat in the parlor, reading from Emma's new books until she fell asleep on the sofa, exhausted from her early rising and the day's excitement. "I'll put her to bed," Virgil said, lifting her carefully. When he returned, he found Beatrice sitting by the fire, her new shawl around her shoulders, gazing thoughtfully into the flames. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, sitting beside her. "I was thinking about last Christmas," she replied. "My first without father. I was so lonely, even with neighbors inviting me for dinner." She turned to look at him. "And now here we are," Virgil agreed, taking her hand. Never thought I'd be grateful for Bertha Wilson's strict policy against children at her boarding house. Beatrice laughed softly. Providence works in mysterious ways. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the fire. I meant what I said yesterday, Virgil said finally. About my intentions. I know you did, Beatrice replied, and I meant my answer. Been thinking about the cabin, Virgil continued. Could have it ready by spring if I work at it through the winter when weather allows. He paused. But maybe we don't need to rush. Maybe there's another solution. Beatrice looked at him curiously. What kind of solution? This place, Virgil gestured around them. It's a good home. Store's doing well. Maybe instead of you visiting our cabin, we could stay here, permanently. You'd want to live above the store, give up your cabin, Beatrice asked, surprised. Cabin's just a place, Virgil replied. Home is where family is. He met her gaze steadily. You've become our family, Beatrice, mine and Emma's. Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes. Are you sure about this, Virgil? It's a big decision. Most sure I've been about anything in a long time, he answered. If you'll have us. Of course I will, Beatrice said softly. Nothing would make me happier. Spring came early to Ruby City that year, melting the snow and bringing wildflowers to the hills around town. Virgil continued to work his claim, but he'd also begun helping more in the store, discovering an unexpected aptitude for business that complemented Beatrice's existing skills. Emma thrived in her school and had made several close friends. In the afternoons, she would help in the store, carefully counting inventory or arranging displays under Beatrice's guidance. By April, Virgil and Beatrice's courtship was common knowledge in town, drawing approving nods from most of the townspeople. They were careful to maintain propriety. Virgil and Emma still occupied their separate room upstairs, but their growing affection for each other was evident to anyone who saw them together. On a particularly fine Sunday in mid-May, Virgil suggested they ride out to the cabin for a picnic. I've made some more improvements, he told Beatrice. Want to show you? The three of them rode out after church, Emma chattering excitedly about the wildflowers they passed and the birds nesting in the trees. The cabin, when they reached it, looked transformed from the rough shelter it had been the previous summer. Virgil had completed the roof and added a stone chimney. The windows gleamed in the sunlight, and a small garden had been planted along the south wall, already showing green shoots pushing through the soil. It's lovely, Virgil, Beatrice said as they dismounted. You've done remarkable work. Wait until you see inside, Emma said, pulling at Beatrice's hand. Papa's been working on a surprise. The interior of the cabin was clean and bright, with polished wooden floors and whitewashed walls. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, and handmade furniture, a table, chairs, and a sideboard filled the space. This is beautiful, Beatrice exclaimed, running her hand over the smooth surface of the table. Did you make all this yourself? Had some help from Cooper at the sawmill, Virgil admitted, but did most of the finishing myself. Show her the best part, Papa, Emma urged. Virgil led them to a door at the back of the main room. This was going to be Emma's room, he explained, but I had another idea. He opened the door to reveal a small but perfectly appointed bedroom with a handsome four-poster bed, a dressing table with a mirror, and a cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Wedding chamber, Virgil said simply. If you'll have me. Beatrice turned to him, her eyes shining. Are you asking me to marry you, Virgil Lawson? I am, he replied, taking her hands in his. Will you marry me, Beatrice Henderson, be a mother to Emma and a wife to me? Yes, Beatrice said without hesitation. With all my heart, yes. Emma squealed with delight, throwing her arms around both of them. Does this mean we'll be a real family, and I can call you Mama Beatrice? Beatrice knelt down to Emma's level. Would you like to call me that? Emma nodded solemnly. I've been practicing in my head. I think my real mama wouldn't mind because she'd want me to have someone to be my mama here. I think you're right, Beatrice said, her voice thick with emotion, and I would be honored to be your mama, Beatrice. Virgil watched them, his throat tight with feeling. After Catherine died, he'd never imagined finding happiness again, much less a new mother for Emma. He'd been lost, unable to connect with his own daughter, trapped in his grief and isolation. "Start with hello," Beatrice had told him. "She'll do the rest." Such simple advice, yet it had changed everything. That first hello had opened a door to his relationship with Emma, to his own healing, and ultimately, to his love for Beatrice. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Ruby City. Emma served as Beatrice's attendant, proudly carrying a bouquet of wildflowers that matched the larger one in Beatrice's hands. Virgil wore a new suit ordered from San Francisco, and Beatrice wore a simple but elegant cream-colored dress that she'd worked on secretly in the evenings leading up to the wedding. The entire town turned out for the ceremony and the celebration that followed. Tables were set up in the street outside the store, laden with food contributed by the townspeople. There was music and dancing well into the evening, with Emma dancing on Virgil's boots, just as she had once danced on her mother's shoes. As the celebration continued around them, Virgil and Beatrice found a quiet moment alone on the back porch of the store, their store now, as the sign had been changed to read Henderson and Lawson General Merchandise. "Happy, Mrs. Lawson?" Virgil asked, his arm around her waist. "Very happy, Mr. Lawson," Beatrice replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Though I do have some news that might make you happier still." Virgil looked down at her, curious. "What news is that?" "I think," Beatrice said with a small, secret smile, "that Emma might have a little brother or sister by Christmas." Virgil stared at her for a moment, then broke into a broad grin. "You're certain?" Beatrice nodded. "Dr. Fredericks confirmed it yesterday." "I wanted to wait until we were married to tell you." Virgil pulled her close, overwhelmed with emotion. "A baby," he murmured against her hair. "Our baby." "Do you think Emma will be pleased?" Beatrice asked. "She'll be overjoyed," Virgil assured her. "Been asking for a sibling since you agreed to marry me." They stood together in the gathering dusk, contemplating their future not in the cabin Virgil had so carefully prepared, but here in town, in the home they'd created together above the store with Emma and soon, a new little one to complete their family. Their first child, a boy they named William, was born that December, just before Christmas. He had Beatrice's brown eyes and Virgil's determined chin, and Emma was enchanted with her baby brother from the moment she saw him. "He's so tiny, Papa," she whispered, gazing at the infant in Beatrice's arms. "Was I ever that small?" "Even smaller," Virgil told her, "but you grew strong and smart, and so will he." As Emma carefully touched her brother's tiny hand, Virgil felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. 2 years ago, he'd been a broken man, unable to connect with his daughter, lost in grief. Now he stood in their cozy home above the store with his growing family around him, Emma, Beatrice, and now little William. The cabin remained, a special retreat for family outings and occasional overnight stays during the warmer months. Virgil still worked his claim, which had finally begun to produce enough silver to provide a comfortable supplement to the store's income. But his real wealth, he knew, was here in this room, in the family he'd found when he least expected it. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed and William was sleeping in his cradle beside their bed, Virgil and Beatrice sat together by the fire. Beatrice was working on a new sampler, the Lawson family. It would read when finished with all their names beneath. "I never thanked you properly," Virgil said suddenly. Beatrice looked up from her needlework. "For what?" "For that advice you gave me all those months ago." "Start with hello, you said. She'll do the rest." He reached for her hand. "Changed my life, those words." "You did the hard part," Beatrice replied, squeezing his fingers. "You opened your heart, to Emma and then to me." "Best thing I ever did," Virgil said simply. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting Ruby City with white just as it had that Christmas Eve a year ago, when they'd first acknowledged their feelings for each other. But inside, by the fire, Virgil Lawson held his wife's hand and knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The years that followed brought their share of challenges and joys. The silver boom in Ruby City eventually waned, but the town survived as a trading hub for the surrounding ranches and smaller settlements. The Henderson and Lawson general merchandise became a cornerstone of the community, expanding to include a small lending library and post office. Emma grew into a thoughtful young woman with her mother's kind heart and her father's quiet strength. At 18, she began teaching at the town school, sharing her love of learning with a new generation of Ruby City children. William was joined by two more siblings, Sarah, born 2 years after him, and James, who arrived 3 years later. The family moved from the rooms above the store to a proper house on the edge of town, though they kept the cabin as a special retreat. Through it all, Virgil never forgot how close he'd come to losing his chance at happiness. Sometimes, watching Beatrice with their children or seeing Emma's patient guidance of her younger siblings, he would remember that lost man who had ridden into Ruby City with a small coffin and a daughter he didn't know how to talk to. "Start with hello," Beatrice had told him. Such simple advice, but it had opened a door to everything that mattered. Years later, when Emma was 22 and preparing to marry a young rancher from the valley, she found Virgil sitting alone on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. "What are you thinking about, Papa?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Thinking about how far we've come," he replied. "Remember when we first came to Ruby City?" Emma nodded. "After Mama died, I was so scared, and you seemed scared too." "I was terrified," Virgil admitted. "Didn't know the first thing about raising a daughter on my own. But you learned," Emma said, taking his hand. "And then we found Mama Beatrice. She found us, more like," Virgil said with a smile. "Saved us both." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder just as she had as a child. "I've been meaning to ask you something, about my wedding." "Anything," Virgil replied. "How did you know?" Emma asked. "With Mama Beatrice, how did you know she was the one?" Virgil considered the question carefully. "Wasn't one moment," he said finally. "Was 100 small ones. Way she listened. Way she cared for you like you were her own from the start. Way she never pushed but always seemed to know what we needed." He paused. "Way she made me remember how to talk again, how to live again." "That's how I feel with Thomas," Emma said softly. "Like he helps me be the best version of myself." "Then you found the right one," Virgil told her, "just like I did." Inside the house, they could hear Beatrice calling the younger children for supper, her voice as warm and steady as it had been that first day in the general store when she'd offered them a room, and though none of them had known it then, a future. "We should go in," Emma said, standing up. "Mama Beatrice doesn't like to serve cold food." As they walked toward the door, Virgil paused, looking at his daughter, no longer the frightened 6-year-old but a confident young woman on the threshold of her own life. "Emma," he said. She turned back. "Yes, Papa, thank you," he said simply. Emma smiled, understanding in her eyes. "For what?" "For doing the rest," Virgil replied. "After hello,